to Beauty Talk Podcast, sponsored by G Skin and Beauty Institute, along with estheticians.com, where we dive deep into the beauty industry and the incredible stories of the professionals shaping it. Today, I am thrilled to introduce someone who is not only revolutionizing a specific niche in the beauty industry, but also an educator and entrepreneur who is helping others expand their business in powerful ways. Jayd Hernandez, the founder and educator at Studio Conceal in Gilbert, Arizona, where she specializes in paramedical tattooing, offering services like stretch mark and scar camouflage, hair loss camouflage, and 3D nipple tattoos for cancer survivors. Jayd is passionate about helping others build confidence, both themselves and with their clients, and she's here to share her expertise on everything from pricing services, booking clients without discounts, and so much more. Get ready to learn from one of the best in the industry. Welcome to the show, Jayd.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, we're very excited to have you here, and I have so many questions to start off, but how about I just let you introduce yourself, let us know how you got into the industry and how you started your studio.
Yes. Well, my name's Jayd Hernandez, and I'm the founder and artist educator here at Studio Conceal. And I always love to say that I am every woman's secret weapon. Because I help eradicate their biggest insecurities, whether it's hair loss, whether it's a scar, whether it's stretch marks, or whether it's helping breast cancer survivors restore the look of their areolas after losing them in a mastectomy. And so I help eradicate those insecurities, help blend them in so that they become way less noticeable. When they look at themselves in the mirror, oftentimes they'll say, don't even think about them anymore, which then leads them to feel a lot more comfortable in their skin. And then we also train artists on our own unique methodology on the side of paramedical tattooing and really help artists build a successful business, helping transform the lives of others.
That's amazing. And there's so much to it, as we kind of have gone over the first time we met. So I'm very thrilled to dive into it. What originally inspired you to get into this industry?
I have always loved working with women, helping women. I've owned a few businesses in the past, and I would say the common denominator has always been serving women in some way, some shape, form. But my first intro to the beauty industry was when I had opened up an airbrush tanning studio in Phoenix. So that was my first beauty business. And I grew to love the industry as a whole. It's always evolving. There's always new things being, released. And being able to work with women on such an intimate level was really exciting and fulfilling for me. I ended up selling that business and then took some time off to figure out, okay, what's my next step? Like, what is it that I want to do? And I just kept going back to wanting to do something in the beauty industry. And then that led me down the rabbit hole of just Googling and seeing, okay, what new things are they doing? And then when I came across paramedical tattooing, I just knew in my heart that that was going to be huge. I think in looking back, I was set up for it before I even became aware of it. I don't know if you've ever had that circumstance in life where like synchronicity, it's just somehow all the experiences from your past led you to this moment, this time. And that's how I felt with paramedical tattooing, because when I was airbrush tanning, I would see women in their most exposed, vulnerable state. A lot of times they were completely nude in front of me. And oftentimes the first thing that would come out of their mouths is, oh my God, I'm so sorry, that I have stretch marks, or I'm so sorry you have to see me like this. And I realized at that moment how self-conscious people were about their scars and stretch marks. And then when I saw that you could make them less visible and minimize them and blend them in through tattooing is when I began to train in this and then eventually open up my own paramedical business. And that was 6 years ago. And then interestingly enough too, when you're tanning, you're training your eyes to notice skin tones at a very technical level. And then when you think about what I do now, which is sometimes I blend inks and customize them to match someone's skin tone perfectly so that I can tattoo it inside of a white scar or a white stretch mark. all of that past experiences from tanning really led me to be really good at matching skin tones today for ink.
Yeah, it definitely can see. This is one of those perfect situations where sometimes where you sort of start somewhere, and many of us believe that that's it, and if it fails, like that's it, right? And it's a great example of story how everything in your life sort of can lead to that next situation or next career in this situation. And I love that you are always open from, going from a tanning salon to now learning paramedical tattooing. You always have kept an open mind about it. And I can tell just the way you express yourself, how in love you are with this career and how much knowledge you have accumulated. So,
Thank you.
yes, of
Yeah,
course.
I
And then
absolutely love it.
a question about that is, for yourself, I know you love educating yourself, and now you're going into teaching others. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yes. So I really love educating. I love helping other women and men start their own business in paramedical tattooing. I have found so much fulfillment in this. And I am also just truly love having freedom, right? Freedom, flexibility, being able to own your own business is the ultimate sense of freedom for me. And so being able to help others with not only the technical side of things, but then also teaching them the business component, because an entirely different skill in itself. Someone can be extremely creative and be an amazing tattoo artist, but that doesn't guarantee that you're going to have a successful tattoo business. I always like to tell students, like, just because you're an incredible chef doesn't mean that you know how to run a successful restaurant. And I think in our industry, very specifically, there's a huge gap between that. And I even think of like estheticians, they get licensed, trained in school, and then they learn, oh my gosh, starting your own business, launching your own business requires all these other different skills that maybe I didn't quite learn in school because I was learning the technical fundamental side of things like skincare. And I didn't realize that I also have to learn how to do sales. I also have to learn how to market myself, learn how to market myself on social media. And that's also something that I really enjoy doing, because being a serial entrepreneur, I have definitely accumulated a lot of experience and knowledge in just learning how to grow a business.
I completely can see that. And I feel like there's this revolution in education where now people that have been in the industry for a while are willing to share all this information, basically pioneering their own schools, you could say, and sharing, like you said, the knowledge beyond what you originally learned. And I love that that's becoming such a big part of the education, because like you said, it is very difficult to come out of school and know, like, okay, well, how much is my work worth, and what do I do, and where do I go next? It's not, you're just going to go straight into do your work. But how beneficial have you seen this be for the newer generations in this industry? And now that you're on the other side and you learned all of this step by step, but how much faster do you see the growth of the artist now that they have these other skills in their pocket?
That's a great question. I would say I noticed when we started training, we weren't even thinking about the business development side of things. That wasn't even brought into play until about last year. And it really came from me just taking a step back and being like, okay, let me just look at all of our artists that we've trained. What percentage of them are still in the business of paramedical tattooing and are running and building and growing their business? And when I saw that the number was pretty low, at that point, I'm like, okay, then there's this gap. How do I fill it? And that's when I realized for myself, because I almost took it for granted that I've always been an entrepreneur since my early 20s. So I almost take it for granted that these are skills that I have just learned over time. And when I realized that there was this gap that needed to be filled, then that's when we began to evolve our training program into more of a mentorship program. And through our mentorship program is really where we help our artists develop and grow their own business. Everything from like, how do you start an LLC? Why would you need to start an LLC? To what insurance company should you be looking into? We have guest speakers from CPAs, experts about, in accounting, what can you write off, especially your first year as an artist, and then all the way upwards to messaging and marketing. And since we've done that, not only are our artists like super loyal to us because they're so appreciative, they've learned so much, but I definitely have seen an increase in our success rate as well because we're there to support them. And we also know that it's going to take time. This isn't something that you're going to learn in 5 days. And so that's also why our mentorship is a year-long program, because I feel like your first year, my objective is to give you as many wins as possible in your first year. Because if you don't have that happen, so let's say you start making a ton of mistakes, you're flailing, you're not getting clients, you're not feeling confident promoting your work because you are making mistakes or whatever the case may be, I feel like that first year is so imperative in really having you stay consistent and committed. It's like that first year will either make you or break you. And if I can show you and be your guiding hand, help you get as many wins as possible, then I think you're already setting up yourself for much more success for year 2, year 3, year 4, and beyond.
I think that, having this type of education goes beyond just a business. I feel like it builds a community, and it builds a safe place for professionals to go back, and they know that they have a group of people that is willing to share knowledge. So I think that I really admire the beauty industry for that. And I think that it is one of the toughest jobs because like I said, it's always continuing education, and it is a growing industry. So I'm very excited to hear a little bit more now about how people that have been maybe in the tattooing industry can add on the service of paramedical tattooing. Can you tell us who paramedical tattooing could be for?
Yes. So paramedical tattooing literally translates to like medical. And so when you talk about paramedical tattooing, what you're really saying is that you're in a very specific niche of tattooing in general, which is more of the medical realm of tattooing. So we specialize in working with scars, skin defects, skin that has been compromised by diseases, disorders, surgical, cosmetic enhancement, cancer, all of those things. And the cool thing about tattooing in general is that there's so many different avenues that you can go into. So we have some, medical tattooists that really love permanent makeup and they do brows or they do lips. And then we have other students that really love tiny tattoos. And I always say, like, this is your business. You can do whatever it is that you want. But typically the people that are drawn to medical tattooing I have found is because they themselves personally have struggled in the past with their own stretch marks or scars. Maybe they've lost someone to cancer and they know someone who struggled with cancer, and this is their way to give back. But I definitely feel like if you have a heart for it, you will just feel a pull to it. And it's really about helping people in a deeper, more profound way. Not to say that, giving someone really amazing brows doesn't boost their confidence. It absolutely does. But I think what we do tends to, because we're always working in the realm of compromised skin, damaged skin, scar tissue, it definitely pulls certain people to want to get into that despite the risk, because they know on the other side the reward is also very high.
Yeah, definitely. I can see it being more personal connections too with the clients in that aspect. Mm-hmm. As far as the people that you see coming in for your education, I know we touched a little bit on, you have seen medical field experts like nurses come in to take courses. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yes, and those are some of my favorite students because they already understand patient care. and they already have a heart for helping others. I'm pretty sure they didn't become a nurse and have to go through schooling and the exams and the licensing if you didn't already have an innate passion and knowing that you are here to help people and you want to help people. And so they are some of my favorite students to work with. But the one thing that's really been interesting with nurses that I've discovered through the years is that a lot of them are, by the time they come to us, are pretty burnt out with the medical system, the medical care. They miss the one-on-one client interactions. They miss that intimacy. And I also think there's a lot of them that are beginning to want to discover, and they know that there's a world of healing beyond medical care. And a lot of them will also say that they're creative and they don't get to necessarily express that in their day-to-day work. And so that's why they're drawn to paramedical tattooing, because it's not only are they able to help people in their own way, have that one-on-one intimate, environment, be more patient care centric, but I also think it allows them to tap into their creative side.
And I think that I have a couple of friends that are in the medical field, and I've seen them kind of go into, like you said, paramedical tattooing, or it could be Botox, or it could be something that's a little bit more artistic, but still sort of related into what they also love, which is the medical part of the industry. And I think that life also changes for a lot of people. For example, they become mothers, or they have to go back to school, or they just simply are, like you said, burnt out. So I think that this is a wonderful way to kind of get yourself, stay in that medical area, but also kind of become, like you said, more expressive with their work. Now, going into the business part of it, I would like to touch a little bit more on what do you cover as far as like finances? How do you get new clients? And maybe how do you get new clients, but, without giving those discounted prices?
I love this question. So as a business owner, I'm very counterintuitive than most industry advice that you're going to be hearing out there. I pretty much go against the grain of salt for a lot of things when it comes to marketing and sales. And so oftentimes, like the biggest thing that I'll see is when we're training our students, we'll give them a suggested rate sheet, like kind of like industry, like this is where I would suggest you be around within this range. And it's really interesting because the minute that we share that with them, that's where a lot of people will start that's where you'll start seeing the limiting beliefs, is what I say. Oh my gosh, can I really charge this? I'm new. I just got trained. Is this something that we work towards? Or, this seems really high. And it's really interesting because what I have found is that most entrepreneurs, now, mind you, these are not skills that we learn. And oftentimes we don't really even learn them if we even go to school for business or marketing. These are skills that we evolve and we accumulate, and it's just something that we keep practice on. And so when it comes to like how to price out your services, I simply think of price as marketing. And so first and foremost, I don't look at what the industry is charging. I don't look at what my competitors are charging. And for me, the way that I think about prices, it's just simply marketing. It's simply marketing the type of caliber and the type of client that you want to attract. And when I say caliber, I'm not speaking, like I only want to attract affluent clientele. What I mean by caliber is how committed do you want this client to be? Because I always say the transformation happens at the transaction. Oftentimes, even myself, it's human nature. When we get things a lot for free, I have signed up for so many free educational courses, and the chances of me actually logging in and completing the course curriculum or the modules is pretty rare. It's not until I actually put some skin into the game and I personally invest in a program. Do I make sure that I'm actually going to complete the modules, log in, go to the coaching calls, watch the replays? And so it's the same thing for our services. And for me, I want to personally attract people who are really committed and who respect the value that I create because I respect and know the value that I create. And this is my business. And it's like, how do you want to brand yourself? So price is simply marketing, the type of client that you want to attract in your business, the type of client that you want to serve and be in treatment and in session, on a very intimate level for hours. And so then when you start doing that, like when you start thinking about that, I think then the next question is, how do I make sure that I feel really aligned with the value that I'm creating and pricing my services for? And that's where we do little things in the studio, like we have snacks, we have water. The way that we have decorated our studio and designed it is very spa-like. It's very clean, sterile, but it's very comfortable and it makes you feel safe. And we have candles and we invest in really great post-care products to help them heal faster. And so that's where you can have a lot more fun. But this is ultimately your business. And so to answer your question, it's there's many different ways in which we talk about like sales and marketing that I think is very different than what they're probably being told as a whole industry wise.
Yeah. And I think that marketing is there's like a broad marketing advice, but I also think that marketing also has to be very personalized, depending on the field that you're in and then specifically for each business. So I completely agree with that. What are some tips that you could give somebody who's just starting off to start gaining confidence once they have these prices and feel confident in the pricing that they put out there for clients?
I would say self-awareness is don't forget to invest in your own mindset because most of us, the majority of people out there have some toxic, negative, and limited money beliefs. For example, like I was, brought up in a family that and they were brought up in the same family as well. So no fault to them. But I was always told from the very beginning that you have to work hard in order to make money and that you have to constantly be working. So in school, I was always an after school kid because my parents were always working. And over time, you adopt those beliefs without even realizing it. So I would say definitely investing in money mindset, shifting those things, because without us really even being aware of it, I see so many artists, estheticians, people in the beauty industry that superimpose their limiting money beliefs onto their clients without even realizing it. And once I began to really dive deep into that, like I made it a year mission for myself where I was like, okay, this is the year that I'm going to really work and help expand my money mindset is when I did a complete 180 on how I felt about money, how I felt about receiving it, how I felt about asking it. I mean, there's so many people who feel really guilty for charging, right? Like, even if you're the one that set your prices and they came, you didn't drag them to your studio and they're there getting a service from you. And then at the very end, you feel icky. Like, do you feel something in your gut where you feel bad about telling them, hey, it's payment time, even though it's already been set and they obviously know what they were going to be paying for from the very beginning. And so again, it's all of those little things that I think sometimes it's easy to really bypass. But over time, if you don't address those things, you're going to learn that it is actually limiting the success and growth of your business.
I think that that's a very good advice, not only just for the people who are in the beauty industry, but in general, because many of us do grow up with that work hard mentality.
Money doesn't grow on trees.
Exactly. Yeah. So I can even relate to that. And I think that educating ourselves, even emotionally, mentally, is such a good investment into anything you do in life. Now, going into the still marketing yourself, I know you mentioned something about getting 5,000 leads in a day at some point. So I would like to kind of go over that and hear your take on it.
So in the beginning of your career, you most likely have a lot more time, right? Like every time I've started a business, I've had a lot more time because I don't have a ton of clients calling me. My phone isn't ringing off the hook. So at that, like in the moment, the beginning stages of your business is really all about building your business. And the way that I think about time is like just take full advantage of the extra time knowing that it's not always going to be this way. And so for me, I value time so much. I think time is one of our most valuable resources because you can always make more money, but you can't make more time. And so in the beginning, if you're slow, if you don't have a ton of clients lining up, this is the time to take full advantage of really building your brand and your business. So one of the things that we share in our training program is how do you reach 5,000 leads in 5 minutes every day? And so the way that we do that is you flare up your Instagram and then you think of your ideal client, your favorite client that you want to attract. So maybe if someone's in paramedical tattooing, maybe their ideal client is a mom, right? Moms oftentimes have stretch marks through pregnancy, or maybe they had stretch marks even before they got pregnant. And so what you do is in the search bar, you're going to start searching for moms, like mommy influencers. Now, this could be a fitness mom, this could be a beauty mom, a fashion mom. It doesn't really matter. And so all you're going to do is literally put in the search bar, fitness mom, for example, if I wanted to go more for the fitness bloggers. Yeah. So then what I would do is anyone who has about, I would say now, like between 4,000 to, I wouldn't do any more than 8,000. So I would say like 4,000 to 7,000, 8,000 followers. Those are going to be considered like what we call micro influencers. So I feel like they have a lot more hands-on touch with their followers still versus someone who may have like 1 million followers is probably not going to get your direct message or isn't going to really look at your profile. Yeah. But when you actually search for these like smaller or micro influencers, what I like about them is that they are still it's different, right? It's a different type of demographic, a different type of community in the sense that they are probably still very much in touch with their followers. And so then when you find a mommy influencer that you like, is just simply going through her feed and liking and commenting. Commenting is much more valuable than likes, but genuinely commenting and looking through her content and making that connection right there. So that's all you're simply doing is making a connection. More than likely, she is going to see on her notifications that, hey, who is this Studio Conceal that's commenting on all my posts? What is she doing? What is Studio Conceal? She's going to click on my profile and most likely look at my company, which may or may not be of interest to her because of her demographic. If she's a mommy influencer fitness blogger, she's probably helping other moms lose weight, maybe like after, post-pregnancy, whatever the case may be. She might see, oh my God, I didn't even know this existed. I didn't know that you could conceal camouflage stretch marks. So many of my moms talk about stretch marks, whatever the case may be. And so what you're basically doing is just establishing a genuine connection with someone that could then lead you to either being promoted, shared, or even just a direct message like, hey, I have a podcast, or hey, can you tell me more about your services? And you're just seeing if there's an opportunity to collaborate to then be able to, market and brand your services to her audience of 4,000 to 7,000, 8,000. So that's kind of like how you have the opportunity to reach her followers, which could be relatable to your services just because the synchronicity of, moms and stretch marks and all of that. So that's our way of, in the beginning, of just making it a habit to reach out to your community and then help expand your reach through their audience because hopefully there's similar relatable content.
Yeah. And I mean, who's not already we're already kind of doing that on the daily where we, go through different profiles. So it is, I think, easy, and it is definitely a good strategy because personally, I like to follow people that have a smaller following because I feel like it's a more genuine connection. And if I see somebody within that range of followers recommend something, I feel like it's in some way like more reachable for me, if that makes sense, rather
Absolutely.
than somebody who has millions of followers, thousands and thousands of followers, where I know that they're getting this income that it's much higher. And in my mind, I'm like, well, I don't know if I could go to where they're going. But when it's somebody that is a little bit more relatable, it makes me feel more comfortable. We were talking off camera about, like, for example, like when I got my first dainty tattoo, I felt more comfortable going into somebody who was doing permanent makeup rather than a tattoo shop, because it's the way that they make me feel when I go in there, rather than, really who is. There may be somebody whose tattoo shop has been around for a long time, but it's just for a different type of clientele. So I think that this kind of relates to that. So I can totally see that.
Yes. And anything is possible, right? So you never know if, the person that you reached out to, maybe they had done everything. Maybe they had already tried laser, microneedling on their own stretch marks and didn't even know that this was an option or a possibility. So you never know what can come of it. But again, it's really about just building those connections to help you grow.
Yeah. And going into connections, and now the other side, how important do you think that client education is?
I think it's really important, but I will have to say, so this is going to feel a little counterintuitive too, is you have to remember that your client is not really interested in all of the industry jargon and technicality. So, what I mean by that is we have an incredible esthetician in our studio. She's considered a clinical esthetician. And if you ask her about like the science of skincare, she loves to dive deep into that. But the problem is that you don't want to market that in your captions, for example, because you're just going to lose your followers anyways. They have a specific problem and they want it solved. They want a specific result for a reason. And so I personally believe as, an artist is really speaking to the emotional needs, right? Like really being able to connect. So this goes back to the connection. I'm not going to connect with my client if I give them too much of industry jargon and like talk about pixels or things that they're not going to understand because they're not in the industry. When we talk like that, that's going to attract another artist, like a peer or a colleague that's in the industry, but you're going to just make your client feel overwhelmed. People don't want to feel overwhelmed. They don't want to feel intimidated. They don't want to feel stupid at all either. And that's obviously not your intention. But I think sometimes when you go way into the technical side of things, the science of things, you've lost them. You've lost the connection essentially. But when you can talk about their pain points and you can make them feel understood and seen, the fastest way to do that is to really be able to understand what are the emotions behind this need. This is how you create a service that's not a luxury service, like a nice to have, but more of a service that's like, I need this. Like, I need this right now. When can I book? And so again, it feels a little bit counterintuitive, but I think it's really begin to listen to your clients. Why do they need to get their brows done? What do they think it's going to give them? How are their mornings right now? What's their struggle right now doing their brows? And then how is that going to help them? And then how is that going to help them, or how is that going to make them feel when it's done? And so a lot of times, for example, a permanent makeup artist is like, moms are busy. They want to look polished. They want to still look kind of somewhat put together when they're dropping their kids off early in the morning. And so that is going to give them that boost in confidence, knowing that it's one less thing that they have to worry about do in the morning. It gives them a pop of that polishedness that essentially is going to help boost their confidence. If you speak about that versus pixelation, for example, you're going to get much more connection from clients and followers than you are if you just talk about the industry stuff.
Yeah. So overall, it's just kind of educating them on the benefits that it'll give the client rather than the science behind it, for sure.
Yes. And I think also just understanding where they're coming from too, right? Like, so of course it's like, so for example, when I started marketing for the 3D areola tattooing, I would listen to clients. And one thing that I noticed all of them would say was, I just want to feel normal again. So when you look at my posts, I'm not talking about the technical things of, I use tattooing and I insert it into the upper middle dermis layer of the skin so that way it can retain. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the power of a paramedical tattooing and that In order to make someone feel normal again, I really focus on creating a hyper realistic tattoo that looks like a real nipple. So those are the things that I talk about, which then makes them feel like I'll literally get people in consultations that say, I feel like you understand me. I feel like I know you. And that's how you become way more visible than if you just talk about the science of things.
I agree. And even from my experience going through your Instagram feed, I become like obsessed in a way, and I got so excited. And I mean, I haven't, gone through this experience of breast cancer, but just, I mean, everything is amazing. But for me, I think that I saw the emotion in some of these clients, and I thought it was amazing. So I can totally see what you mean as far as the showing kind of more of the emotional part, because I immediately connected. Even though I haven't gone through this experience, I have friends whose family members or themselves have gone through this, and it's just, it seems like it's something that will make somebody's life a little brighter. Mm-hmm. And really feel them emotionally on a daily basis. And so you kind of connect. So I totally agree.
I feel like, who's a brand that's really good at this is Target. Like, how many of us have gone to Target for one or two things, right? Yes. And then we walk out with a cart full of things. And so I feel like Target is always a really great brand to study. Like, literally, when you're inside a Target store, how do you feel? Because every little display is marketed in a way to, like you said, make you feel like this is what you need, that this is going to make your bathroom a little bit brighter, or that this particular shirt is going to make you feel better or cuter, or whatever the case may be. Like, they're so good with their marketing to the point that it's an emotional purchase, right? Like, these are things not necessarily that we needed. I actually had a list of things I needed, but now I'm walking out with all these other things that now I think I need. And so they're very, very good at tapping into the emotions. And so if you can think of those brands, I think it can help you learn how to market your stuff in a way that's going to tap into the emotions.
Yeah. Now, do you think that there are any misconceptions as far as with paramedical tattooing?
Misconceptions as how?
As far as like, well, for example, my question was like the first time that I got a tattoo, I felt really silly, but it was genuinely, it came up. It's like, but am I going to need a touch up, or will this last? Anything, kind of questions like that.
I think those are really valid questions. And those are questions that I guess I get asked all the time. So I think that's a great opportunity to now educate your clients, right? Like, now they're in front of you, they're having these conversations, whether it's in the DMs or whether it's in person. So this is definitely the time to show them that you're an authority, that you're an expert, that you're a specialist, that you're an ethical artist. So this is where, yes, it's really good to explain, will they need a touch up? How many sessions will they need? What does that look like? How does this process look like? How does it look like while I'm healing? How long will it take me to heal? And so, yes, I think those are all valid questions. As for misconceptions, I think, paramedical tattooing is still so new. 9 out of 10 times when I tell people what I do for a living, it's still to this day, and I've been in the industry for 6 years, I still will get, I never knew this existed. I've never heard of this. It makes sense. So it's still so new. So I feel like maybe the biggest misconception is, oh, wait, so do you do brows? That's probably the biggest misconception, because a lot of people understand what permanent makeup is. And so they just kind of associate tattooing with like permanent makeup. And so I just let them know, like, no, I don't. We have other girls in the studio that do those things, but I really specialize in more so the medical side of tattooing, which is scar revisions, skin camouflage. And then that's usually where we can talk further about, like, what does that look like? So that's probably the biggest misconception is, oh, like I do brows, which there are some artists that do brows too.
Yeah. And as far as going back to making your clients feel comfortable, what do you think as far as paramedical tattooing are the biggest ways to make a client comfortable, or whether it's either before, during, or after the service?
Ooh, I love that you asked this question. It's really the simple things. The details really matter. So I would say the biggest thing is make sure that you are timely. I am always a minimum 30 minutes ready or at the studio before my appointment time or even before my consultation time. So I always make sure that I'm always at the studio before we meet. A couple of reasons why I'm really big on timeliness is because I just want to respect people's time. So that's like the biggest first impression that you can make is I am prepared for you and I knew that you were coming can help them to feel more comfortable and more safe because you have to remember they're coming in to talk about some of their biggest insecurities. And essentially, you're kind of a stranger to them. Like, yes, they've researched you, they've looked at your Instagram, your portfolio, whatever the case may be, but you're still a stranger to them. And they have to talk to you about these things that really bother them and that are holding them back. And so I think, making sure that you're really punctual because even if they're running early, so this is like my biggest thing. Even if they're running early, let's say they show up 10 minutes before our scheduled time and I'm not there, even though they're running early and I'm not technically late, it will make it look like you're late. Does that make sense? So I just always make sure I'm always super early. So in the case that they're running early, I'm still looking like, hey, we're set up for you. We're expecting you. Welcome. Then I think the biggest thing is, just making sure that they feel welcomed. But I think third, so making sure that they feel welcome. So first, punctual, making sure that they feel welcomed, do you have to use the restroom? Would you like a bottle of water? Here's our studio. Welcome. Come back to the room. You can follow me. And then third is really listening to them. I feel like in today's world with social media and so many distractions, we have really lost the art of listening and being able to just let someone open up without having to feel the need to complete their sentences for them or dismiss it or even bypass it. I mean, again, I don't think anyone is doing this on purpose. But I think sometimes, especially when I'm dealing with cancer survivors, I have never had cancer myself. So I'm never going to tell someone, I know exactly what you're feeling. I get it. I would never say that because I don't. So I think a better way of communicating is simply listening to them and in the moment, if whatever you feel that sincerely comes up for you, you can just say it. Like, I'm so sorry you had to go through that. I have never had cancer. I can never imagine what that would feel like, or whatever the case may be. But really, and you don't even have to say anything. I think if you're in the presence of someone and they're just simply listening and being fully, fully present with you, that in itself is really healing and validating, and nothing actually has to ever be said from you. And then there was something else that I wanted to share. Another thing that I do too is I make sure that my phone is out of the treatment room. So that way they do feel fully present with me. Like even when we're doing this podcast interview right now, like I made sure that I put my phone outside the room because even if it's on silent, if you can hear that vibration, it's still going to disconnect us from being fully present with each other. And so I just leave all distractions away from the treatment room so that they have my undivided attention 110%.
Yeah, totally. And as far as when the client comes in with family members, or do you allow them to bring that in? Is that like a comfort thing for them too?
Yes, I love it if they want to. I would say kids, probably not kids, only because we have needles. We have a lot of like interesting things that I think kids would want to touch or grab. And I don't want that liability. I want them to obviously be safe, and kids get bored. So we do have a no kids policy in our studio. But as for like if they want to bring their friend or their partner, yes, absolutely. Especially if their partner or friends was part of their cancer team of really supporting them through this entire journey.
And in a way, you sort of become part of that team, That's why I asked, because just generally going to the doctor when you're not feeling well, I love that you said that the emotional support, sometimes these patients could be at the doctor, like you and I go for maybe something smaller, and you just feel unheard, unseen because you're in such a rush. And I feel that, like you said, arriving there early and, letting them talk and giving them the space to talk is so important and so beautiful that you can incorporate this to your service, because at the end of the day, it is a part of their experience that they're going to go through this treatment. So overall, I'm very obsessed with that part of of what you do. But how about, for example, when we have clients that go in, whether it's the stretch marks, is it different, or with hair loss? Do you feel as far as emotionally connecting with them? Are there different strategies?
I think it's all the same. It's just being able to validate their emotions, being able to provide a really safe space for them where they don't feel judged. I think that's always going to serve you well in all areas of life, even outside of business. But I think when it comes to like hair loss or stretch marks, it's all the same, but they may describe it a little bit differently. And so I'll hear certain things that are a little bit different. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I think they, by the time they've come to me, they have tried everything, and it really does bother them, and it affects their daily life, and it affects like the freedom that they have in their own skin, or even like the simplest things of, I can't wear my hair up because I'm always afraid that those areas are so thin, and that's where I feel most self-conscious, or I'm always wearing hair fibers and powders on my scalp, and I never, work out in the gym in a public gym because I'm always afraid that if I sweat, those fibers and powders are going to smudge off. And so I think the only reason why I understand my clients so well is because I really listen to what they're saying and extract like what are the very specific pain points that they have, and then how can I solve that for them. And I always tell my students, like, entrepreneurs, you are problem solvers before you are an entrepreneur. You are a problem solver before you are a paramedical tattoo artist. And so again, it's really being open to understanding what are their specific problems, and then how can I communicate in a way to let them know that this is a really great solution for them that will ultimately change their lives for the better.
Definitely. Now, as far as clients, do you see that there is a growing amount of male patients or male clients that come into your studio?
Yes, absolutely. I will say though, predominantly though, maybe because of the way that I market, it is like 90% female focused, but I don't turn away men at all. And we definitely will get male clients. But I will say predominantly I work with women more often than not.
Yeah. And then to start wrapping things up, what is it that you would recommend for anybody who's interested in this field, as an entrepreneur, now an instructor, and with all the experience that you have, what would be some of the top recommendations that you would have for people who want to get into paramedical tattooing?
I love this question too. So, number one thing is, if you feel a pull to this, what I have found is people will just start researching and they'll start looking things up. What is paramedical tattooing? And then they'll kind of dive into the industry. And we have incredible resources on YouTube. We have a playlist that basically talks about the industry in itself. What is paramedical tattooing? How competitive is the industry? How many forms of paramedical tattooing can you get into? State licensing requirements to become a paramedical tattoo artist. So we have so many free resources to share with people about the industry in itself. So I will say that after you've kind of dived into that world, when and if you still find that you have a passion for it, like you just feel pulled towards it more, I would say honor that first and foremost. And then follow through in the sense of researching training programs. I think the biggest thing is figure out first what type of student you are. Do you need hands-on practice? What kind of support and guidance works really well for you to support the way in which you learn? And then seek out trainers that have programs that can support the unique way you are as a student and learner of this craft. And then I would call them. So once you find a trainer, I would then reach out to them and talk to them. And I would also look at their portfolio and just make sure that they're still in the industry and that they're also producing really great work. The last thing you want to do is learn from someone who's so far out of touch with the client services, or is using stock photography, for example, as their work, right? Because you really want to learn from someone skilled, especially in this art form where you're working on compromised skin. And then the biggest thing too is if you've never touched a tattoo pen before, I personally believe that it has to be done in person. Online courses are great for continuing education. I'm a huge advocate for that. But again, because we're always working on damaged scar tissue of some sort, you really want to be able to understand how deep do you need to go. And that's going to vary per person. Some people are heavier handed artists, some people are very light handed artists. And having that in person instruction is going to really give you a great foundation to do incredible work. Because the furthest thing that you want to do is take someone's insecurity and then permanently alter it in a way that's actually going to make them feel worse about themselves.
Yeah. And then is there any required education before starting in paramedical tattooing?
Not really. I think if you have some skincare background, like estheticians are really, really great when they're coming into this field because they are already working on skin and they already have a great understanding of the anatomy of it. And also, right, serving clients in this sort of setting. So I think they make great students. I think the biggest thing is just looking into your own state tattooing licensing laws and regulations, if there are any. Every state is going to be different, but I think first and foremost is just knowing what that is, so that way you can legally have your own paramedical tattoo business and just see what are the things that I'll need to do or what am I really getting into before I step into this industry. Like we had a student. I think she had to complete 16 or 1800 hours before she became a licensed paramedical tattoo artist in her state. And so again, that's going to require a lot more commitment than someone that lives in Arizona where we're not so much regulated when it comes to tattooing.
Yeah, so really educate yourself on what is other requirements exactly where you live or where you plan to have your career.
Yes.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Is there anything else that you want to leave us with?
No, I just really appreciated my time with you today. And thank you so much. Like these questions were a lot of fun in answering, and I hope they help.
Thank you all for tuning in. And as always, if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, follow us on social media, and share it with others who could benefit from Jayd's expertise. Until next time, stay inspired and educated.